All he wanted were the same answers the rest of us want. Where do I come from? Where am I going? How long have I got?
Okay, we're almost finished with the forces interaction. We've got one here that's going to be very interesting, I think. And what we have so far is we've had gravitation and convolution, which are the primary forces that compress mass and consciousness from Big Bang to Big Crunch. And we have electromagnetism, quantum magnetism, where we're showing an experiment where we can prove higher thought levels, that thoughts evolve to higher levels in more evolved animals. And so now what we're going to be talking about is the third and fourth forces. And the third and fourth forces are important from the standpoint of explaining oscillation. How does this mass and consciousness oscillate from Big Bang to Big Crunch, universe after universe? The way it does it is with these forces. Now, in 2004, three physics colleagues, won a Nobel Peace Prize for a theory that said that the strong atomic force was the dominant force in the nucleus. So if it is the dominant force, then the weak force in the atomic structure is recessive. Now let's suppose that when mass compresses into a black hole, this is what I theorized, I postulated this idea, that they reverse roles. So the strong atomic becomes recessive and the weak force becomes dominant. And that creates a mechanism for that mass to compress without deforming or being reduced to zero. So what I'm saying is I'm saying that a black hole may be compressed very tightly, but there's something there, something physical in the universe. It's not zero volume in this theory. And now if you have two forms of substance in this universe, mass and consciousness, and mass is composed of atoms, then consciousness must be composed of an equally sized component. And I gave a word to that because there wasn't one, which is mota, which is atom spelled backwards. And so I have the word motaic. Just as you have atom and atomic, you have mota and motaic. So you have a strong motaic and weak motaic force within consciousness so that it can make that similar transition when it compresses and that final compression into a God. Okay, so then how does that work? What's the formula? This may be a little more than you want to know, but we're going to go through these two little formulas here. They're pretty simple. We have gravitation compressing mass, squeezing out the energy, underwhelming the atomic dominant force, switching to strong recessive, which causes the weak recessive to switch to weak dominant, equals a black hole. So now we have the weak force is dominant, WD, weak dominant. And we have a black hole, which is at minimal energy. And you can see that it's in minimal because we've taken the energy out. So what is the formula for consciousness compressing into a God? Well, we have convolution, compressing consciousness, overwhelming the motaic strong dominant, which causes the strong recessive to switch to weak recessive, which switches to weak dominant at peak thought level equals a God. Now God with a small g, because until we get to the end of the Big Crunch, there's only one God at the end of the Big Crunch. But until then, there can be lots of gods, just as there can be lots of black holes, millions, billions of them.
Gaff had been there and let her live. 4 years, he figured. He was wrong. Tyrell had told me Rachel was special. No termination date. I didn't know how long we'd have together. Who does?
Okay, let's talk about advanced convolution for a moment. Earlier we talked about the compression of consciousness to higher thought levels, and over the duration of the universe, all consciousness is headed in the direction of a single God consciousness, highest thought level. But how does it achieve it? How do you take step forwards in greater levels of thought? How do you do that? That equation we talked about earlier, thought equals consciousness times speed of light squared. How do you get to higher thought levels? How do we do that? this is how we do it. There are two spectrums related to this, which are understanding, intellect, and connectedness, love. And at the God level is full intellect of how the universe works and love for all consciousness in the universe. And at the base level here, when consciousness very first enters the smallest level of life form, single-celled organism, this is the base level. It has very almost zero understanding of the universe and zero connection with other consciousness. As this elevates up, we feel greater connection with other beings, other life forms, other people. And eventually we have love for everyone. This is what Christ did. He had love for everyone. This is why he was evolving to such a level. And he had intellect about how it all worked. And as he did so, his consciousness reached that God level. So did Buddha. And but you have to understand this. Once you reach that God level, then you're going to be in that state until the next Big Bang. Because there is no life form that you can go into that's at the God level. At least that's part of my theory. I mean, I don't want to throw anyone off. Anyone, believes that gods can come back, that's fine. Maybe they can. This is a theory. So don't let me dissuade you from your belief. Anyway, so what's an example of this? Well, when I was working on this theory, I was driving along the road one day and I thought, it's an interesting idea that all life forms have modes of consciousness. From a blade of grass to a tree, and I'm looking out and around, and I looked over and I saw a horse and a donkey next to each other, and they were walking together, and they're the only ones in this farm field there, and I thought, well, that's nice, they're company for each other, And I felt a connection with them over here. And I had some understanding, which I'm talking about here, that all life forms have this, we all have this same form of substance, whether you're at the God level or a single cell. That substance of consciousness is the same stuff. It's just different levels of thought. And which probably relates to different amounts of this stuff that's compressed. And so anyway, just when I was thinking that, a falcon flew in front and looked directly at me. And in that moment that happened, I was intellectually convinced that we all had this same form of substance, and I felt a connection of love with them in that regard, that we were brethren in that respect, that we all have this same thing, this same form of substance. And, that bit of substance in that falcon flying by, someday that consciousness will be in a human being. And I know that's an odd thought, but that's the progression. That's a compression of consciousness to a higher level. That's convolution, consciousness evolution. And these are just the spectrums. As your consciousness compresses, it compresses to higher thought levels. And it does so through these two spectrums.